The bottle is still cold when the cashier scans it. On the receipt, the drink has a price. Under that price, a second line appears, 25 cents. The German word printed beside it is Pfand, deposit. You pay both amounts before you leave the store. Outside, the seal cracks. The water disappears in 3 swallows on a Berlin platform. The plastic is empty, light, pinched at the shoulder. In most countries, this object is already trash. In Germany, it is not. It still carries a cash value. Not because the resin is scarce. A statute attached a claim to the container the moment the scanner beeped. The drink is gone. The claim remains. This is Germany's bottle deposit system. Follow one covered single-use beverage container from checkout to return, and tidy streets stop looking like a national personality. They start looking like a market with a second price on packaging. The empty bottle rides in a backpack. It sits on a windowsill for a week. Nobody treats it as a coin. Nobody drops it in mixed waste either. 25 cents is not a fortune. It is large enough to change a hand. At the supermarket entrance, reverse vending machines wait under fluorescent light. A round aperture.
A voucher slot. The bottle you bought is not unique. Thousands of twins enter the same holes in the same hour. Here's the contradiction a child can see. The useful thing was the liquid. The liquid is gone. The leftover packaging still cashes out. The mechanism is blunt. A mandatory deposit, a standardized mark, a retailer duty to take empties back, machine records, a national clearing process. If this bottle never returns, the person who paid the deposit does not get it back. A price signal has been attached to disposal. Hold one limit in view. The 25-cent rule applies to covered single-use containers, not every bottle in the cooler. Reusable packaging follows different deposit amounts and different circulation rules. Blur that distinction and the map goes false. The empty disposable bottle retains a legally created cash value after the drink itself is gone. The law put the value there. Now watch how a country makes that value collectible. Most visitors photograph the machines and call the habit culture. The sharper word is classification. A German cooler is not one market behind a glass door. It is 2 legal species standing in the same chill. One species is single-use beverage packaging, manufactured to be emptied and then crushed, baled, or remelted. The other is reusable packaging, manufactured to be washed, inspected, refilled, and sent around the circuit again. The law does not treat them as cousins. It treats them as different contracts. That is what most people miss. They see bottles. The statute sees pathways. Reusable containers belong to older industrial loops. A brewery or a mineral water filler keeps a fleet of heavy glass. Wooden or plastic crates move like pallets through back rooms that smell of old beer and wet cardboard. A shop accepts those empties because a specific logistics chain will collect them. The deposit attached to that loop is real. It is also not the one-way instrument. The amounts differ. The circulation differs. The bottle is an asset in a circuit, counted by crate, washed in a plant, and refilled until it scars or breaks. Single-use packaging arrived with a different biography. Through the late 20th century, light polyethylene terephthalate and aluminum spread across European retail. A one-way bottle is cheaper to haul one direction. It does not require a crate pool. It does not wait for a brewery truck on a fixed weekday. For a brand manager, that is simpler logistics. For municipal bins and roadside ditches, that is a rising pile of shells. Germany answered the pile by attaching a large mandatory deposit to covered one-way drinks. The modern one-way deposit obligation took force in 2003, after years of combat over packaging ordinances and retail resistance. The aim was a relative price, not a hymn. If a disposable container carried a hefty refundable claim, a shopper had a reason to carry it home, and a filler had a reason to feel the one-way path as something other than a free ride on public collection. The first months were ugly in a specifically commercial way. Shops argued about whose empties counted, consumers ferried bags from one chain to another. A token that could be refunded only at the original till was not a national market. It was a pile of exceptions. A nationwide operator had to sit in the middle, or the claim died at the wrong door. Deutsche Pfandsystem GmbH, known as DPG, became that middle. It registered participants, license the mark that identifies a one-way container as eligible, and organize the process that lets a bottle bought in one banner be returned in another. Germany's Environment Agency, in its own voice, documents the mandatory €0.25 deposit, the retailer return duty, the consumer refund, and the nationwide clearing requirement for covered single-use beverage packaging. DPG, independently, documents the legally required deposit of 25 cents, the registered return process, consumer reimbursement, the reverse vending network, and deposit clearing. Those pages do not annex the entire cooler. The coverage line has moved since the original fight. On 1 January 2024, the deposit obligation expanded. The Environment Agency records the change as a widening of the existing duty. More single-use beverage packaging that had sat outside the instrument was pulled under the same €0.25 amount, the same take-back, the same refund, the same clearing. Dairy drinks and other former holdouts had to enter machinery built for water and lemonade. Label designers added marks.
Machine vendors updated recognition files. Warehouse managers discovered new streams of sticky empties in January light. Reusable packaging did not change species because a calendar flipped. A swing-top bottle in a branded crate still travels a refill road. A shop that stacks those crates is feeding a circuit of washers and fillers, not automatically feeding one-way clearing. Same aisle, separate law. Before 2003, a discarded one-way bottle was mostly an externality with a slogan printed on the shrink wrap. After the obligation, that bottle became a bearer instrument. After the 2024 widening, more of the shelf carries the instrument. Follow only the one-way bottle, and you are following packaging priced after the product dies, not a national mood. The person who set the claim in motion is not the cashier. It is the first distributor, the firm that places a covered one-way drink on the German market. That firm charges the deposit downstream. It also inherits a participation duty it cannot treat as a marketing choice. If the article is covered, the article must be registered, marked, and entered into the return world. Skip the mark, and the product becomes a problem at the loading dock. The first distributor's motive is continuity of listing. Retail chains have no patience for unmarked articles that machines will spit out. In a careful controller's ledger, the deposit charged is not merchandise margin. It is a sum that must later reconcile against returns. Units that come back close. Units that never come back do not close in the consumer's favor. Across the aisle stands the retailer. A discounter in North Rhine-Westphalia measures prosperity in euros per square meter. A reverse vending bay occupies space that could hold biscuits. It needs power, a service contract, a dry floor, and a staffer who can open a jammed flap on Saturday at noon. Take-back still applies to covered empties in the material types the shop sells. The aperture does not ask whether this supermarket earned the original deposit. It asks whether the container is eligible. That incentive is strange on purpose. The shop may refund a rival's water all afternoon. It does so because the statute assigned it a role, and because clearing is supposed to make it whole. Until the file settles, the shop has paid out store credit and is holding someone else's crushed plastic. The shopper is a temporary bearer. Empties accumulate in a balcony crate until the crate offends someone. Then a bag that smells of orange soda meets a counting screen. The motive is recovery of money already spent. A fourth figure works the bins. In Berlin courtyards and Hamburg stations, collectors lift bottles from public trash with a practiced twist. They are not DPG staff. They are harvesters of a residual price that detaches from the original buyer. Once the empty sits in a park, the claim becomes finder's economics. Machine vendors sell recognition, compaction, and uptime. Their customer is the retailer's fear of a Sunday queue. A dead machine turns a legal duty into a crowd. In product meetings, the fight is older than any screen.
A reusable filler is a banker of glass. Broken bottles are inventory deaths. Crates vanish. Washing burns heat. Switching a line to one-way PET deletes that theater and delivers the drink into the marked world. Registration, artwork, a permanent link to take back. Some firms keep both faces, crate and light bottle, as a bet on logistics cost versus pool cost. A dairy pulled into the wider duty after the 2024 calendar change had to make that bet under a deadline. New codes, new files, retailer ultimatums. Miss the mark, and the return hole will later reject the empty. DPG sits above the motives as plumbing. It needs the token recognized in every banner, so a claim minted at one warehouse can be extinguished at another without a fight at the service desk. Everyone in the chain is trying not to be the party left holding an open deposit. That fear is the engine. Idealism is optional.
The bottle arrives at the hole at 9:14 on a weekday. Condensation is gone. The label is scuffed. A hand pushes it into the rubber collar. The drum turns. Cameras look for a shape. A scanner looks for a code. Software looks for the registered DPG mark, the licensed identifier printed into the artwork that tells the network this shell is a participant and not a random piece of plastic. No music, only a motor. If the mark is absent, the machine reverses. The bottle comes back to the hand like a returned coin. An unmarked empty is not a small error. It is a claim the system will not honor. Foreign packaging, counterfeit prints, containers flattened until the code is unreadable. Each fails for the same economic reason. The return market is not a charity for all emptiness. It is a ledger of registered units. This bottle has the mark. The code matches a listed article. The drum accepts the unit. Then the machine does the thing that makes the claim single use in practice as well as in law. It compacts the container. The cylinder becomes a wafer. A second redemption of the same object becomes a physical absurdity. On the screen, a count ticks from 0 to 1.
More bottles follow from the same bag. A cola, a sparkling water, a can that entered the duty in the newer wave. The can rings with a different timbre. The software does not care about thirst. It cares about eligibility. A paper strip prints. The shop has acknowledged a debt to the bearer. At the grocery till, the strip becomes a deduction against eggs, bread, the next pack of water. The residual price converts back into groceries. Now the plastic sits in a sealed sack in a back room that smells of sour sugar. A contractor will haul the sack. Each accepted unit is a record. Time, store, article identification, count. Those records are the raw material of clearing. Clearing is the unphotographed climax. The supermarket that just credited the shopper may not be the banner that collected the deposit last month. Without a settlement layer, every honest refund would be a gift to a competitor's cash flow. With settlement, the returning retailer submits counts. The participant behind that article code is debited. The returning point is credited. Money moves after packaging moves, on a delay measured in files rather than in speeches. Watch the tension inside that delay.
The retailer has already given away value at the till. Staff time is gone. The machine lease is due whether or not the file is clean. If a code is disputed, the shop is a creditor of the system. If a drum is generous to a bad print, the shop may later hold a unit that no first distributor will accept. Recognition software is therefore not a gadget. It is the frontier of who loses money. When the machine dies, the law does not die with it. Staff must take eligible empties by hand, count them, and keep them from being walked back in for a second strip. Manual takeback is the old world leaking through a modern aperture. Retailer takeback duties are not symmetrical. A large full-range market that sells one-way PET and cans becomes a general return desk for those materials, including brands it never shelved. A tiny kiosk living under a smaller area rule may take back only what it stocks, and only in the quantities a counter can stand. The line exists because a nationwide return market cannot be carried by a newsstand and cannot be optional for a hypermarket. Obligation follows footprint. The bottle that never arrives writes a different entry. Someone leaves it on a regional train.
Someone drops it in residual waste. Someone forgets a bag under a picnic bench. There is no strip. There is no till deduction. The buyer who paid at checkout does not receive the amount again. The Environment Agency describes refund on return. DPG describes reimbursement for registered empties that actually appear. The inverse needs no extra charge sheet. No return, no payout to that buyer. What then becomes of the unredeemed amount is a bookkeeping question, with more than one pocket in the chain. The public documents at the center of this story do not deliver a single cinematic villain the entire sum. They establish something colder. The cash value was always conditional. It was a price for completing a return, not a permanent companion of the purchase.
Abandon the container, and you abandon the condition. That condition is the wound. One-way convenience still wins minutes. A light bottle goes into a rucksack. A crate of glass does not. Filler after filler can live inside the marked world, carry participation costs, and keep selling disposable convenience because the shopper will carry one empty, not 8. The high one-way deposit changed street behavior.
It did not abolish the one-way shelf. The machine is an immigration officer for packaging. It does not award money to an object that merely looks local. It awards money to a registered identity. Inside the store, operations and the statute finally collide at human scale. A manager faces a Saturday rush and 3 blocked drums. The law still says accept the empties. The queue still says the line is too long. The first distributor still says the code is valid. The reusable crate in the corner still waits for a brewery truck that comes twice a week. The bottle we followed is now a wafer in a bale, a row in a file, a credit in motion toward the shop that paid, a debit in motion toward the firm that first charged. The drink is nowhere. The claim is being extinguished. And somewhere under a train seat, a twin bottle rolls with the curve of the track. It will not meet a drum. Its buyer will not see a strip. The legally created value will remain uncollected by the person who created the claim with a purchase. A mechanism can coordinate millions of handoffs and still leak at every seam where a human is in a hurry.
By the time the wafer reaches a recycling plant, the interesting event is already over. Flakes and furnaces are industry. The strange object was the claim. Germany did not make people virtuous. It made an empty, eligible, single-use container temporarily expensive to abandon. The drink could vanish. The packaging could not vanish from the books until someone completed a reverse sale. That reverse sale is the documentary's real product. You do not ask a million strangers to care. You hand them a token that other strangers will honor, and you force the shops that sold the sugar water to become cashiers of garbage. Once that token exists, it reorganizes the room. Floor space becomes a financial instrument. A licensed print on a label becomes a passport. A compacted wafer becomes proof that a claim has been killed. A file between companies becomes more important than a speech about rivers. Competitors stand in for one another at the hole because the alternative is a country of dead ends. This is how a weird price becomes rational. Isolated, 25 cents on trash looks like theater. Embedded in marking, take-back, machines, and clearing, it is a coordination device.
It recruits the consumer's stinginess, the retailer's fear of unpaid refunds, the distributor's fear of being delisted, and the collector's willingness to put a hand into a bin. None of those motives is noble. Together, they move an object that sermons could not move. The design has a shadow equal to its power. A residual price only works on the articles it names. Cover a category, and the bags fill with that category. Leave a category outside, and the ditch still receives it. Raise the amount on one-way shells, and you change litter. You do not automatically resurrect the old glass fleets, because convenience is also a price, paid in minutes rather than cents. Two legal species can share a door and still teach opposite lessons about what an empty thing is. There was a further shadow. Conditional value trains the eye. Germans scan gutters the way other people scan for coins. The street looks moral. The ledger is doing the work. And because the ledger is doing the work, the cleanliness is reversible in principle. Withdraw the claim, and the same hands will travel differently tomorrow. That is not a prediction of collapse. It is a statement about mechanism.
Behavior that appears cultural is often just a price that has been left on long enough to feel like character. It is a demonstration that law can invent a commodity in the husk of another commodity, then build a nationwide market in the husk. The chain holds because each party loses money if it steps out of position. Stand in front of a dark supermarket at night. The drums are still. Behind glass, a wall of drinks keeps two kinds of tomorrow. One bottle that will be washed and filled. One bottle that will be crushed for a credit. Same thirst, different afterlives. Only one of those afterlives is the 25-cent one-way instrument, and only for the articles the law has named. The haunting remainder is not the wafer. It is the twin under the train seat,
still legally priced, practically unpriced, waiting for a hand that may never come. If a government can mint cash onto an empty shell and make rivals clear the minting among themselves, what other discarded thing is only one number away from becoming a market?